Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for being here today. The last time I lectured, a couple people talked to me maybe the next day or the day after about dealing with what they called fear, or kind of this underlying uncomfortableness about just being in our world today as it is, and what can we do about that? And so that's kind of where this lecture came from. So it's called Let's Cope Together. And hi. And it's really going to be about managing anxiety. And the big part of why we're anxious is because we have uncertainty. So that's what the lecture is going to be about today. So I'll start out first just talking about the difference between anxiety and fear, because we're really not going to be talking about fear today. We're focused on anxiety. And does anybody know the difference between anxiety and fear? For yourself, maybe?
For me, anxiety is kind of general, but fear is usually of something.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right. So fear is a reaction to a specific threat. So you're going to step off the curb and you see a huge truck coming. That's, fear. Your sympathetic nervous system's all fired up. You react to it immediately. So it's some sort of observable danger. That's what we typically have fear. Anxiety, you're right, is more of a generalized feeling that makes it a little bit harder to deal with, because sometimes we don't even know where it's coming from, which is what some of the participants here were talking about, this kind of generalized feeling of unease. Anxiety is usually driven by the what ifs, thinking about the future, which we can't control, right? So that makes it even harder. What if this happens? What if that happens? So therefore, things in the future are very uncertain. We could sit down and do a lot of thinking about the what ifs, and then it may change when it gets there. So it's change is inevitable. The what ifs are always going to be there. So anxiety is an emotion characterized by feelings of tension, worried thoughts, and sometimes physical changes are associated with anxiety too. So it's normal. We have anxiety for a reason. Anxiety, we need a little bit of it each day in order to function and make plans and get through our life. A small amount of anxiety, such as I had when I was preparing for this talk. If I didn't have any anxiety over it, I would have just stayed in bed and watched the Olympics, probably. But it helps us to deal with life. It helps you perform your best, and it motivates you to work toward your goals. So, you all are here today, probably all showed up to the cardiovascular wellness program because you have a little bit of anxiety. You want to be healthy. So anxiety is motivating to us. So it's not always a bad thing. So too much anxiety, or kind of, a chronic kind of long-term anxiety that's just kind of there all the time, can make us feel restless. So that's one of the big things. It's just kind of this feeling of just a little unease, a little restless, not sure where it's coming from. You may not even realize you're feeling anything, but maybe you're just a little bit more irritable, or have a little bit more fatigue. Having kind of a low level anxiety can cause us to ruminate. Ruminate means kind of go over things in our mind on this cycle, and then overthink things, and we get stuck in that cycle. We just carry it with us throughout our day. And when we have that kind of rumination or overthinking going, it changes how we interact with people. We don't interact with people the same. If we go to work, we work in a different way. We're coming at our whole life from a kind of a different perspective, a different focus. So it can interfere with our ability to enjoy life. And in the long run, it can contribute to health issues. Anxiety is associated with increased risk for a heart attack and stroke. So some signs that you may be experiencing anxiety. Of course, all of these things can be signs that you're experiencing other things, but these are some of the signs, and we're all different. But you may be feeling just more restless in general, noticing that you're ruminating and overthinking, having a sense of dread or unease. I years ago when I was going through my divorce, just out of the blue, every morning when I would get up to go to work and it would be like 5:15 in the morning, and I'd be getting ready, I just had this sense of impending doom. I didn't know where it was from. There was nothing, that really was impending, that I felt like I was in danger. Um, but that happened for, probably a couple years, I'd say. So that's kind of a common one. And I didn't realize that. Increased irritability, trouble concentrating, trouble remembering things. If we're ruminating and overthinking, we don't have room in our brain to process other things. So we can't remember people's names and how we did things, those kinds of things. And then physical symptoms sometimes, such as a racing heart, shortness of breath, difficulty sleeping, high blood pressure. And as I said before, it can affect your job relationships and your ability to enjoy life. Any of you guys have any symptoms of anxiety that you've noticed in yourself? You don't have to share if you don't want.
Increases my,
Yeah,
and it's the littlest things that I can get so reactive to.
right,
And I think it's that low grade anxiety.
right. You're just running around at a level up already, and then something happens that's just little on top of that. And it's like the straw that, is it the straw that broke the camel's back?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. It's another Midwestern saying, Carrie. You feel like you're up the creek without a paddle, really.
The Midwest, I thought it was all.
So why are we having so much anxiety these days? Remember, anxiety is worrying about the future, things that may or may not happen, all the what ifs in life. Do we have a lot of what ifs in our culture and our world right now? Yeah. A lot of things that really don't have a lot to do with us, but there's a lot of them. So these are just some things. There's a lot of what ifs right now, not even in our, and then on our personal life, we have a lot of what ifs, but there is so much going on in the world right now. Post-pandemic issues are still going on. Some people are still working from home. Restaurants still have not recovered. Prices are elevated. There's world unrest and wars going on that we didn't have a few years ago. The economy has not recovered. Am I making you guys a little anxious right now? Okay.
A little.
The political elections are coming up. It's an election year. Climate change, we're hearing about that nonstop. And then the internet. When I was growing up, and even when my kids were young, we didn't have the internet, which is a never-ending cycle of news and information. Just cannot get away from it. I'm not a big phone or internet user, but even myself, it's just chronic stimulation that comes in.
I saw my computer. Microsoft may have changed something, so I have to learn how to use something different.
Right. Every time what's it called when you update? Yeah. Everything's different, right? Yeah. That's just an example of that. Yeah. Even if you try to be the kind of person that says, well, I'm just going to live a simpler life and I'm not going to get involved in all that stuff. You can't help it. It just comes right into your life, which is stressful in and of itself. So we are not alone. The American Psychological Association does a poll every year. It's called the Harris Poll, and they look to see what Americans are feeling anxious about. And they specifically ask that question. 73, in this year, 2024, 73% of us are anxious about the election. 79% are anxious about the current economy and what's going to happen and the ups and downs of all that. Should we keep our money in the stock? Should we, buy gold? All of those things coming at us. 68% are anxious about keeping themselves or their families safe. Concerned about our health, paying bills. 69% are concerned about gun violence. That was not so true 20 years ago, was it? 63% concerned about keeping our identity safe. Another thing that 20 years ago we weren't so concerned about.
Yesterday, I almost got scammed in a very innocent way.
Yeah.
It was very realistic. I had the good sense to think it through and call the company and ask a question. And they said, oh, no, we would never do that. And it was in regards to a delivery that I'm getting today. But somehow or other, someone else knew I was getting this delivery.
Just that is anxiety producing, that somebody else knows that.
Call,
Oh,
and the fee would be $1.95 for my delivery. And please enter my credit card.
oh,
For $1.95.
95.
And I would have gotten scammed for $19,500.
Right.
I mean, you know, that's so.
And then you're still carrying that around today. That's right at the top of your mind. Yes.
And
Yes.
Well, I've always was a little skeptical anyway, but the trust factor of what I read and what I see is limited,
Yes.
very limited.
And we have to be vigilant. And just walking around being vigilant is exhausting, isn't it?
How they knew all of this was just there had to be some connection, but you know, who knows?
And we have to be vigilant, even in sitting in our home. It used to be that there was stuff out in the world, but if we got back to our home and we were there, we could let go of the vigilance. But now you're just sitting in your home, that this happened in your home probably when that message came across, right?
And you become so proficient that if you're at all naive or don't take a little time to look into it, you can really get hurt.
And I think they take advantage of the fact that there's an age.
Yes, and why did they know our ages? How did they get that?
I guess they, you know, are thinking, well, that we're more victims to their, you know, deceit because we may not remember things
Yes,
properly or question things like we should.
yes,
A lot of facts.
yes,
We're used to a society that's very trusting. I mean,
Yes.
much more trust
right,
than we have.
yes. So we have to adjust. Even if we don't want to, we have to adjust. Change is inevitable.
On Facebook, I'm not on Facebook a lot, but when I look at some of the, I don't see them as much, but there's questions like, oh, what was the name of your first dog or whatever?
Right.
You know, like a survey, like,
Yeah.
just throwing it out there.
Yes,
And then I go, that's, you know, cause somebody that's, you know. like,
Your
like-
security information.
Yeah, so I go, why would people, you know, actually, some people can make that fun, you know, you're just giving people your.
Yes,
I always
yes.
Wonder about that.
Yes, right. Vigilant. You're
In the
you're trying to
beginning.
relax and all of a sudden, yeah. Yes,
And my situation was that they got into my email and sent out emails to all the people in my list that I needed money. And if they please send whatever.
ah,
And one of my friends called me and she said, I think there's something going on here. I don't think this is from you.
right.
So, my daughter helped me. It took 3 hours to figure it all out and to change my password and to make a lot of changes.
Right.
And it originated someplace in Nigeria.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Everything is so connected and you can't keep up with it. Can't keep up with it. So, the last one on the list here is all the emerging technologies, which is kind of what we're talking about. So I don't put this up here to get all of us more anxious, but I want you to, sometimes when we're walking around feeling kind of a little restless or we're ruminating or we're feeling a little more anxious, we blame ourselves. We think, oh, you know, there's something weird about me or I shouldn't be feeling this way. I want you to realize that we're not alone with this. I mean, everybody's feeling this right now. So, you know, be comforted by the fact that we're all in this together. There's a lot going on. So I wanted to talk a little bit about these emerging technologies. I was a week ago when I started working on this talk, I was driving home from someplace, I don't know, and Monterey, and it was kind of a long trip. So I put on podcast. And there was a woman on there. Her name is Amy Webb. And I guess a lot of people have heard of her. I hadn't heard of her. And she's a strategic foresight and does strategic foresight and strategic planning. And she, I think, works at NYU, and she graduated from Harvard. And this is what she, every year she puts on these conferences, and people come from all over to learn, what to anticipate. And she was talking about what to anticipate. And she was saying that we all of us, whether we're Generation X, Y, Z, baby boomers, whether we're Democrat, whether we're Republican, whether we live in the South, whether we live in the North, we are all of us together in this together. And we're part of what she calls the generation transition. There is a huge transition going on right now. And we are transitioning into this kind of super cycle. And the super cycle that we are involved in is kind of an explosive, and we feel it all, explosive technology innovation is going on right now. Above and beyond all the other things, the climate change, the election year, the post-pandemic, there is this super cycle happening right now. And we are part of the generation that's going to help move this along, whether we want to be or not. We are part of it. We're going to be part of history. These long-lasting changes in technology are going to affect all areas of life, including our everyday habits. Do you guys remember the Jetsons?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I watched the Jetsons, I thought that was like watching AI, really. They knew what you were supposed to eat. You took a pill for it. I mean, it was amazing, that whole thing. But that's kind of what's happening now. So these technology innovations are going to affect our everyday habits, our global politics, healthcare. It's affecting healthcare right now, finance, and all of our personal and social interactions, and industry, of course. So I didn't realize this, but we are still in what is part of the Industrial Revolution. The last time we had a big industrial revolution was way back in 1780 when the steam engine developed, right? Before that, it was America was all just agriculture, and people were out there with these little handmade shovels, really, and planting and that sort of thing. And there were some horses, but the steam engine really changed everything, and we created machinery, and everything became much quicker. And then after that, so that was 1780, and then 1900, there was mass production because of all the machinery that was created. And all of these things you can see, between the origination of the steam engine and then mass production, which people were working in factories and things were being made. That was 120 years during that, between that one big thing and then the next big thing that was part of the Industrial Revolution. And then in 1970, the computer came out, and there was 70 years before that happened. So that was the next kind of big thing, right? So people had a lot of breaks, kind of get used to it. It's not just one generation that's involved in it. And then in the 2000s, the internet popped on the scene. Boy, that was a big, huge, big change. And right now, we are still in the Industrial Revolution, but it's only been 20 years since the last big thing happened, which was the internet. And now we're in this, what they call Industry 5.0, which is all of the things that are currently going to be happening now, which are the super cycle. So that involves AI. We're all hearing about artificial intelligence. It's already become a part of our lives. I called up Fidelity to check on something with one of my accounts, and they said, how usually they ask you for some sort of passcode or something, and they said, "Oh, we recognize your voice, Sharon." I'm like, "Really? How did you get my voice?" So it's just amazing. So artificial intelligence, which is going to enable computers and machines to simulate human intelligence and problem solve. Biotechnology, which is all good thing. Most of it's good things. Insulin, creating growth hormone, gene and stem cell things are coming along to help cure diseases. Vaccines are part of the biotechnology. And then wearable devices. So I have, a watch on right now, and it tells me what my heart rate is, and it tells me how well I slept and whether or not I got REM sleep or deep sleep. And then I get anxious if I see that I didn't have any deep sleep, right? Then I'm ruminating about that, so
We didn't watch.
right.
You don't need that feedback.
Right. So, but these things, the super cycle, whether we want to or not. I mean, eventually the doctors are going to want to know, well, what was your heart rate running all day? Did you have AFib? All those things are going to be, whether you have an Apple Watch or not, there's going to be some sort of device that's going to be recording your health and helping to decide what medicine you should be on and your treatments and all those. These three things are all just not happening independently. They're all converging. They're all working together to change the way that we live. So, are there a lot of what ifs as part of this whole thing? Huge amount of what ifs. So that's on top of all the other things that are happening.
You're speaking about. Martin Luther King,
Yes.
But I remember in the eighties, when I was taking a class, it wasn't he wasn't my instructor, but like one of the instructors had a heart attack, so his colleagues, took over some of his classes. So when he came back, I had a class after he came back, after he recuperated and all that. And his doctor his cardiologist doctor said, get rid of that digital watch and go to analytical, because I think when you see the time, when it's a face,
Uh-huh.
you don't see the minutes, but when you have a digital, you see how it moves. Time seems to go faster.
Faster. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that kind of connection.
Which causes kind of this low
More
level.
information you get.
Mhm. The more you have to take in, the more you have to process it, the more maybe you have to have a what if about it, right? Yeah. So all of this really brings us to the point of that there is a lot of uncertainty. We're all normal. And if we're experiencing these low level feelings, we can't help but feel those, and it's normal to be feeling them. So, but the whole thing behind all of this is that there's uncertainty. That is the whole ball of wax. So what can help? What can help with this? So the first thing is to challenge your need for certainty. I know we like to have certainty, and in the past, we've been able to have a lot more certainty than we have now. But we have to accept that there's going to be uncertainty. It's just going to be out there. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, but uncertainty is not always such a bad thing. But accepting that the only thing that is for sure in life is that there's going to be change and that there's going to be uncertainty. And I'm going to talk about that. We can develop and use some stress reducing habits. I'm going to talk about that. It's all the things that you guys do here. Exercise, mindfulness activities, music, mind games, reading, painting, journaling, all those things can help take us away from all that ruminating. Those are all called mindful activities. And it takes you away from the worrying and the ruminating and the what ifs and brings you right to the present. Like what you're doing right now. I know I'm making you a little more anxious because I'm talking about it, but you're right here in this moment. It's anxiety reducing in order to be with people in groups and doing things. Having purpose, which means that you're yearning for kind of new discoveries, having personal growth. It brings you back, doing those kinds of things brings you back to yourself. Carrie was talking, I don't think she'll mind. We were talking this morning about a lot of things, but one of the things that we were talking about is, after you retire and you're not quite sure what you're doing yet, you can end up just being in your house. And what are you doing if you're in your house? You're ruminating, you're thinking about the what ifs. You're not out there in the world getting new input, having new growth. But by coming here, all of you and all the staff too, it's like coming home to ourselves. And Carrie actually called it. She said, it's like coming home when I come here. And by coming home means you're coming back to yourself and you're experiencing new growth within yourself and new experiences. So seeking out community groups and activities like the cardiovascular wellness program, tune into your feelings and talk with a friend or professional about them, and then be aware of your story. So we're going to go a little bit deeper into some of these. So what helps to reduce anxiety? Dealing with uncertainty, accepting uncertainty. Very little in our lives is constant or certain, correct? Right? Very little. And even if it is constant or certain, it's only constant or certain for a short period of time, right? We can't control everything that happens to us or those that we love, right? So one of the things that we can do is take some time, and we're not going to do it right now, but I recommend take some time to explore uncertainty. So if there's things that you're ruminating about or that you're feeling uncertain about, actually did this yesterday. Just take some quiet time and just sit and just be with the uncertainty and think to yourself, well, if that were to happen, if X were to happen, what would I do? How would I be able to handle that? And most of the things that you come up with that are uncertain, even if it involves, worst case scenarios, like one of our family members, we have experience and we have wisdom and we have efficacy in our lives. And we've gotten through so many things already in our lives. And I think if you take some time to do this, you will discover the efficacy and the strength within you. And that helps reduce some of the feelings of uncertainty, because all the what ifs, we're not really thinking it through and thinking, well, I really have handled this in the past. I could handle this. So taking some time to explore the uncertainty and just sitting with it for a while. And then always don't assume that bad things will happen because the outcome is uncertain, right? I just showed you all those things that are uncertain, and we're kind of assuming, oh, those are all bad things. This is going to be bad, 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 bad. Always in my history of having bad things or hard things happen, there's always been some good things that have happened along with those bad or really hard things. Even when you think of funerals of family members or close friends, when I think of those times, I always recall the coming together and extreme closeness that I've had with family members and relatives coming in from that I haven't seen in a long time, and old stories that help you connect to yourself and to others, and the warmth that you feel. So always with uncertainty, there's a whole other story going on at the same time. So challenge your need for certainty. Where hard or bad things happen, good things happen too. We just talked about that. Remembering that when we faced uncertainty and had even small successes when we faced uncertainty, that it's given us improved confidence and a feeling that we can handle life. We do this with our kids, right? We allow them to fail and struggle. We don't save them all the time, because that's the only way that they know that they can handle life, and that they develop coping mechanisms, and that they believe in themselves, and that they have good self-esteem. It's the same for all of us. So during these times of uncertainty, I think it's important to get in touch with our own wisdom, with our own ability to manage life, and remembering all the times that we have managed life and done well through it. Facing and getting through uncertainty increases our resiliency and our growth as a person. If I had not had the difficult children that I have had, I would be a different person, and not as good a person. So uncertainty can be helpful. So besides accepting uncertainty, we can also do practices that help us deal with uncertainty. Practicing being mindful and paying attention to what is happening in the current moment, being present, allowing yourself to feel the uncertainty and just sitting with it. And then practicing other mindfulness activities. When we're listening to music, when you guys, I don't know if you participated in like the karaoke project that the students did. When we were doing karaoke and we're watching other people do karaoke, we're not thinking about AI, right? We're thinking about how amazing that person sounds. Or when I was up here, you were all thinking about, why is she up there? Really, why? But we're in the moment. So whether it's, doing a crossword puzzle, doing, is it Mahjong that you guys play? Am I saying it right? Mahjong. When you guys are doing Mahjong. Mahjong. When you're doing that, you're right in the moment with it, aren't you? Yeah. It's a wonderful thing. So those are all mindfulness activities. One mindfulness activity is called meditation. And when you're doing meditation, you're sitting and being aware of something. Many people use breathing as their anchor to bring them back. But there's other things. You can walk and just being aware of your steps. You can do a gratitude mindfulness meditation where you're thinking of what you're grateful for and sending loving kindness messages. So there's all different things, but all of them involve an anchor. And so when you're doing that, you will find, and it's normal and this should happen, that you will get pulled away from your anchor. And just as with life, when you're having a lot of what ifs, they're going to pull you away from your anchor. But practicing meditation helps you realize that you can get back to your anchor. It's good practice to know that you are resilient. And even when you get pulled away from your anchor, that you can come back to it pretty easily. And the more you practice it, the more easily you can come back to your anchor, the more easily you can come back to yourself. So meditation creates a stronger appreciation for the present moment, allows you to learn that you're resilient, and allows you to learn that you have self-efficacy or the ability to manage whatever comes your way in life. And Linda comes here once a month, Linda Larson, and teaches a mindfulness and meditation class. Have any of you guys participated in that? You love it? Yeah, it's a great class, and it's also on Zoom. So even if you can't come, it's something you can do on Zoom. So I've already kind of discussed this. These are some other mindfulness practice that we can do and that most of you do here. Any of you, while I'm talking about this, have any experiences with doing any of these mindfulness activities? Maybe come here in the morning and you're feeling kind of scattered and restless, and then you've done one of these activities and noticed that you felt different or that it made your day different?
Not necessarily, I don't see it on the list, but for me, I live alone and a lot of us do, and I have to get out of my house.
Yes.
Like safe place for me to go is to the library,
Mm.
and I can pick up a couple books that I don't necessarily want to take home, but I just want to read a little bit. More
Yes.
about it. It's very safe.
Yes, it's very safe and it's mindful. You're looking at the book, you're reading the table of contents, you're opening up a chapter, you're reading a page. You have to be present to do that. Yes. So I've got reading on here. Yes. And it's also a quiet place. Although they do have computers now at libraries, don't they?
Yeah, but
They're separate kind of. Mhm. Anybody else have any experiences that they can share or
Sometimes gardening.
gardening?
Outside early morning.
Yes.
And doing a little bit of watering or gardening,
Mhm.
which is is more soothing. And
Yes.
for me, it's relaxing.
And I know with gardening or with exercise too, you can ruminate while you're doing that. But I find that because you've got to then focus the hose, you've got to get the arms set up right on the machines. You have to be mindful when you get pulled back to your anchor once again. So all of those things are helpful. And then I wanted to when I was getting ready for this talk, once again, Linda said, "Oh, you should listen to the talk that Ken Cross gave about the walking pilgrimage that he did." And did any of you guys hear the lecture that he gave last week? Anybody? It's on Zoom. And so I did listen to it, and he was talking about doing a walking pilgrimage. I can't say it. Pilgrimage. Um, and it was the Camino de Santiago. Is that what it was? Yeah, in Spain. Yeah. Where you walk, I don't know how many miles it is along. Yeah. And it's a pilgrimage involves, Carrie's making fun of me before this. Usually involves, you don't go alone. It's not a hero's journey. It's usually done with there's groups of people. So it's a very social connection type of activity. And Ken was describing that he felt when he was doing this, that there were 3 pillars to a pilgrimage. And one of them was social awareness and connection and camaraderie and mutual encouragement that happened along the walk. And the second one was that most people that were there were looking to get in touch and discover and grow in their purpose in life and their purpose in the moment. So it involves exploration and personal growth. And then also, of course, when you're walking or doing a wandering or a journey, there's physical activity involved and fitness involved. So there's a physical aspect to the process. So it got me thinking that, in all pilgrimages, I'm just not going to say it anymore. In when you're doing a pilgrimage, pilgrimage, um, you have to once again get outside of the ruminating and the what ifs, and you're just present in the moment. And so coming to the cardiac rehab, the cardiovascular wellness program here, all of you are really, every time you come, experiencing that, because these three pillars are all available here for all of us. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the social awareness and social connection, because I don't know if you guys have found this to be true, but I so have found this to be true in all areas of my life. Nothing of significance was ever achieved by an individual acting alone. Look below the surface and you will find that all seemingly solo acts are really team efforts. Don't you think that's true? So true. So important. And it's such a huge part of this program and why this program, I think, feels like coming home too. So I was thinking about this idea of a pilgrimage, and I thought, how can you have a daily pilgrimage? How can you just integrate this? You don't have to wait and save up money to go to Spain to have this experience. How can you do this just in your daily life? So a pilgrimage implies that there's action. So first of all, you need to be intentional about it. Decide to make today a journey. And a couple days ago, I went to San Francisco with a friend of mine, and I thought, I'm just going to make today be a pilgrim,
One of those things.
one of those things that we're talking about here. Um, and so and how do you do that? You try to get those three pillars in it. And so I thought I'm going to get the three pillars in it, plus a few more that I think are important that we'll talk about. So first of all, define your purpose. And so my purpose was just to have some new discoveries in my day. When we were going to San Francisco, I'm going to have some new discoveries here. And then we were going to walk from the St. Francis Yard Harbor out to the Golden Gate Bridge and back, and feel the air and see the ocean. And so it was going to be the physical component was part of that. And there's a lot of people walking along those paths, but I wanted to really make it even more of a social experience than I usually do, because I was being intentional. And so we were walking along, and then I saw this group of bicyclists, and one of them came up to me, seemed to be the leader, and he said, "Do you know if there's restrooms here?" And I did know that there were restrooms at this warming hut, but all of a sudden this whole swarm of people came, and they were French, and most of them, they didn't speak English very well. And I tried to explain to them that it was at this warming hut, which was further down. And, but they weren't understanding me. And I said, "Oh, I'll just go with you." So I joined this whole group, and I felt really, once I did that, that I was part of a pilgrimage. And I even said it correctly that time. So I added that social component in, and it was just so fun, and we were trying to talk, and I had to walk fast because they were on their bicycles. And so that was that part. And the two that I've added on here that I think that I think really are part of doing a pilgrimage, is to embrace uncertainty. You're getting out of your normal life and you're growing. So do or try something new, take a risk socially or in some other way. And you can do that every day. You could do it after this lecture's over, and if you're going to be here for another half an hour, you could do it within the half an hour. Go try a different piece of exercise equipment. Talk to somebody you haven't talked to before. Ask a question you haven't asked. Sit in the corner and pull a book out of the shelf and read 2 pages, something new. Open your heart to the blessings and peace of not knowing all the answers. Embrace uncertainty. The more you embrace uncertainty, the more you realize that there are blessings and peacefulness in embracing the uncertainty. It's not such a bad thing. It's not a horrible thing. And you only know that if you practice that. So you have to practice it in little ways. So this is the cardiovascular wellness program, which is a pilgrimage. And these are all the things that you guys may recognize some of yourselves in here that we do here. So always when people come here, I think there's growth and people finding a purpose, right? So we've got that pillar. Always there's activity. And if there's one activity you don't like, there's always something. Linda puts the balls up and you do drumming activities or there's stretching.
Eating something you haven't ever tasted before.
Eating something you haven't tasted. Yeah. Getting out of your little box and trying something new. Jumping into the uncertainty of that. There's mindfulness activities and Linda Larson's meditation. So, and of course, you know, the whole group thing. Look at this, you know, it's a wonderful thing. So yes,
For me, I feel safe and cared for, cared about.
yes,
That's just such a comfortable.
yeah,
feeling to, you know, just be.
yes, yes,
So.
accepted. Yeah, that's the value of family, isn't it? Well, most of the time, sometimes not so much. Some of our families, not so much, but the good moments with family is like that, right? So what do you think about that? The cardiovascular wellness program is a pilgrimage, whatever it is. It is that word. Yes. Yeah.
This grief house thing or grief, dealing with grief that someone's lost a loved one.
Yeah, well, I gave a lecture, I think about 2 months ago on grief. It's on the YouTube. It's on, if you go to the YouTube and then type in Sac State Cardiovascular Wellness Program, it'll be on there. I don't know if we'd have to ask Linda if there's been other things. I'm sure they've done other things on grief throughout the years. If you go to YouTube and then you type in, I think it's CSUS and then the Cardiovascular Wellness Program, you'll get to the site where all the lectures are. Yes, there's one on grief. Yes.
Gentleman that we went out to lunch with on Father's Day.
Uh-huh.
They found him inside of his house and then come to the gym in a few days.
Yeah.
Firefighter said,
Yeah.
get in. And
Yeah.
found out he passed away.
Right.
And he was talking about his grief and his grievances that day on Father's Day and how lonely he was.
Yeah.
And then a week later, he's gone.
You know, you bring up a good point that I didn't put on the slides, but we are all, and even more so at this age, dealing with the uncertainty of our death coming, right? I didn't put that on there, but that's a huge one, you know? And as we get older, it's more on our mind because we're having people around us pass away, have health issues. So that's a huge one. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes.
Really important.
Very important. So also a way to deal with uncertainty is to seek support, which you all have mentioned, you know, coming here and feeling supported, feeling seen. That's huge. Being aware and accepting of your feelings of anxiety and uncertainty. So, you know, getting professional help. It's not, you don't have to, you know, be feeling really anxious to the point where you can't leave your house to seek professional help. Talking to somebody, you know, a pastor, those kinds of things. And if you need any kind of assistance with finding somebody or anything that has to do with dealing with your uncertainty or things in your life that are difficult and you're struggling and having obstacles, reach out to the staff here in the cardiovascular wellness program anytime you need support, guidance, or just someone to listen, because that's what we're here for. Mhm. And I want to end, I think this is my last slide. I want to end with the idea that the story, your story matters. And what I mean by story is the story that you're telling yourself. We all have stories in our head all day long. And it could be, you know, that, well, I'll give an example of myself. When I went to San Francisco after this great pilgrimage that I had, then there was, when I got back to my car, there was this beeping sound in my car. I'm not gonna tell the whole story, but I thought that it was my brand new RAV4 was having this alarm and I couldn't get it to turn off. And and it went on for like 3 hours. And anyway, it turned out, I thought, so I had this story in my head after a while that this was a lemon car, that there was gonna be chronic electrical problems with this car, that it was an electrical problem, and that this was not gonna end, and this was gonna be for the next 10 years that I had this car, I was gonna be dealing with these electrical problems. And I didn't say it out loud, but this was in my head, you know? So that was my story, right? And because of that story, I was feeling more anxious. When you're more anxious, you have a hard time figuring out problems. Long story short, there was a flashlight which had a alarm on it for if somebody was attacking you, you could press this button, and it was sitting down right next to the speaker, and it was my flashlight that was alarming, not the car, not the electrical conduction system. It was the flashlight. So, you know, our thoughts and our story that we tell ourselves creates our reality, and it creates our behavior. So be aware of what story you have in your head with these what ifs. And if you're noticing that you've got a really negative story going on, it's possible that that negative story has some truth to it, that there's a neighbor that's bothering you, that's just, you know, a bad person and making your life miserable, something like that. But be aware that there is always another story there too, that we can notice and that we can make bigger and that we can expand upon. So working on finding a story that has some truth, it has to be a true story, uh, and it gives you power and gives you hope. We listen to the If we listen to the wrong voice, we will make the wrong choices. And there's always 2 or 3 stories there, no matter what's going on. So any questions or comments?
I will always say that for myself, it can be really, really hard to find the real story. It doesn't just, even if I sit and just try and be quiet, it can take days or
Yes.
find changes with people or things in life.
It's a process. Uh-huh. Yes. Yeah, and until you get to that other story that's there, it's there all the time. It's sometimes it's harder to see it until you get to it. You have to say to yourself, this what's going on now is not going to last forever. It never does, right? That's when that alarm was going off for 2 hours, I kept thinking, yeah, this is going to pass. This is going to stop one way or another. That one way or another, this alarm is not going to be here forever. I knew that. And it's the same with everything. And that allows us just to realize, oh yeah, this is not going to be here forever. It's going to pass. But yes, finding another story sometimes requires talking to people so that you can process things. And because if you're sitting by yourself, ruminating, you're not getting any other input. It's really hard to find another story if you're just ruminating yourself, right? So it's really helpful to come here, you know, talk to people, do other things. It opens up your minds. That's the way to help you find another story about what's going on. And talking to a professional. If you're really can't, then talking to a professional, because that'll help you. That helps to expedite finding the other stories that are there.
And you alluded to resiliency as well, that we've endured past difficulties and hardships, and
We know we
we
can,
got to the other side,
Right.
and that we're strong enough to face our own what ifs.
we've done it before, we do it again. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? Okay. All right. Thank you all for being here today, as always. I love it. I love to see all your faces out there.